Welcome to Behind the Brand, the podcast for small business owners, solopreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs who are ready to start strong, stand out, and stay bold. I'm Taylor.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Isabella, and we're part of the powerhouse team of marketers at Moxie Creative.
We're taking you behind the scenes to explore what it takes to build and grow a memorable brand.
Ready to get behind the brand? Let's dive in. Oh, hello, Moxieverse. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Brand. We are the podcast for small business owners, entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs. I'm Taylor, and I'm joined with my regular co-host, Kelly, and a
Drum
new
roll,
face to the pod, Michael Nelson.
It's Michael.
Woohoo! Creative director.
Yes, creative director, jack of all trades, right brain, left brain. Michael is a very invaluable, is that the right word?
Yes.
Member of our team. We could not do what we do without him and his guidance.
In baseball, he'd be the utility player. Could play all the positions.
I don't know what that means.
Utility?
Baseball?
Yeah.
I don't follow
What's baseball?
They hit the ball with a bat. Anyway, I always think of him as utility.
Yes, he is. But we asked Michael to join us for this episode today because what we're really going to talk about is the importance of creative when it comes to marketing. And that is a huge philosophy that we have here at Moxie, and we stress the importance of not settling for fine. And when businesses do settle for fine, it's not bad, it's not broken, it's just safe, simple, and
It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Fine. I'm fine. Friends? No?
Yes.
Okay. Forgettable. And in today's market, that just doesn't really work. So no, we wanted to talk more about that. So Kelly, starting with you, the whole idea of fine isn't good enough that we've really leaned into here at Moxie. It's a bit of your brainchild. Where do you feel like that came from?
Well, I think people will say to us, I don't need anything fancy. I just need it to work. And it's like, well, it takes the same amount of brain power, dollars to do terrible creative as it does good creative. So I think they say that because of our culture here in Stearns County in central Minnesota that, don't be fancy, don't spend a lot of money and just, whatever. But it is the creative that makes a campaign work. So I think when looking at our work compared to maybe some of our competitors, it is a notch up in creativity, we believe.
Right.
And we've been told that.
Allegedly.
Yes, allegedly. Supposedly. Well, I said that right. And, and as evidence is maybe from some of our awards for creativity. Mm-hmm. Some people think they don't need that because they assume it's going to cost more. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or whatever. Just don't be fancy. They just think. So they'll just, have someone else do it and it's fine. And then they place the importance on the tactic. Mm-hmm. For instance, a billboard. I did a billboard and people say to us, it didn't work. Well, the billboard was the tactic. What was your messaging? What was your creative? What was the location? There's a lot of reasons why something works or doesn't work. And I just think they're just getting it done. And we're like, let's take a little bit more, let's take a step back and make it great.
Right.
Type of a thing. So that is what we're trying to explain how we're different. And another way we say it is out with the old, in with the bold. And we don't mean literally bold, garish design. We mean, make it great, take a step out of your comfort zone and be bold. Don't just be fine and blend in. Again, I think a little bit of that, don't be fancy, just it's done, I did it. I did a billboard, it's fine, it's good, but it didn't work. Well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is, in a nutshell, what we believe here at Moxie. We want our clients to step out of their comfort zone, be okay with taking a little bit of a risk. That doesn't mean we're going to try to sway them to do something that feels contradictory to what their message, their goal, their brand voice is. It's actually quite the opposite, right? We want to be able to elevate all of that through creative. Wouldn't you say, Michael?
Yes.
Yes, I would say.
I'm just listening.
Do we sound smart? Do we sound smart on here?
Yeah, we really know what we're talking about.
I was just thinking as we were saying that, is that probably in some parts of the country or the world, people be like, don't overstate that. Like maybe they don't have this problem that we have here. But in, central Minnesota and Minnesotans in general, we're very modest and understated. And so we're like begging people to please, let's push your strengths.
Yeah.
In marketing. And maybe that's not a problem other places.
Right.
But here it's just kind of like, I'm just going to put my logo up there and the picture of my building.
Yeah. Because they think that's what looks professional, right?
Yeah, and they think that's fine. And it's like, no, we can have a theme. We can do this.
And I look at it, okay, we're just going to slap our logo and some text on a white background. And sure, it's professional because it has bits of your branding on it. And, maybe you did have someone, an agency of some sort do it. It wasn't just something that you did on, a Word document. But that's not going to be what helps you connect with your audience. It's
Right.
not going to be the thing that helps you resonate. So time and time again, you're the person or the business that they turn to. And that's where design can really come in. It can help provide intention and clarity to your overall message.
So let's ask Michael the next question.
Yeah. So we've all worked with businesses that are doing so many things, but when they come to us, their brand itself, maybe just feels fine. What do you think maybe causes like that complacency or the desire to just settle and say, okay, like I have a logo.
I never liked it,
works,
but it's my logo.
But it works. Why do you think people do that? And if they, come to you, or like, do you, are there things, even if it's internal, you can say what you would say to us. It doesn't have to be necessarily what you would say to a client, but how do you handle that as a creative?
Well, it's funny. I mean, people have sometimes a sense of tradition, like we've always done it this way, so we're always going to do it that way. And it's like, how come it's not working anymore? It's like, well, it's time to change it up. So there's that sense of the cost sunk fallacy where they've put all this time and money into it and it's still not working. But we put all this time and money into it. So sometimes it's just hard to make that change. And I think, like you said, fine gets it done, but fine is totally forgettable, generally. Like, a fine meal, you can go have a fine meal, you'll get fed, but you're not going to remember it. And I think it's the same thing for design.
I
and
love that
messaging.
analogy.
Yeah, that was great.
You're not hungry anymore, but you're not like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
You'll never
Right.
think about it, but a memorable message or a memorable design will stick in your head.
I feel like they often want to look like their competitors instead of different from their competitors. And we try to make them look and sound and be different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when we have a new branding client come on, for example, maybe they're starting a new business and they need a logo and the whole brand expansion. For an example, say they come in and they are a car company. We might look at inspiration from other industries, right? So it's not just, okay, you're another car company. But sometimes our clients will bring in inspiration that is another
that's what I'm
car
saying.
company. So
Yeah.
that's, what you get when you work with a team like us is we'll think outside the box for you because maybe you don't have
You're stuck in the box, yeah.
you don't have the ability to do that, or you don't understand, how important that is.
'Cause, there's different ways of telling that message without just copying what's already been done. Like we did with Car Concierge, where we elevated that brand. We didn't just show cars or mechanics or tires.
Right, yeah.
With the cool colors
Yeah.
and cool
Can,
looks.
can we talk a little bit about the branding process?
Sure,
Ellen?
yeah.
Okay.
I would absolutely love to.
Okay, as I believe that we do, is that we try to get to the essence of their brand, something that's important to them, and then you try to communicate that through the design,
Yeah.
but not necessarily literally, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
'Cause
explain that. How do you do it?
Explain
How do you
that.
do it, Michael? Let's. You
bunch
tell
of
us
happy
how.
accidents.
all intuition.
You do it. Yeah, you tell us how so we can copy. No, go ahead.
It is a lot of intuition. It's kind
Yeah,
of like
what's going on in your head?
Lots of stuff. You kind of, you like get to know the person and you get to know their business, and then you maybe look at other competitors, look at other ideas, what's been done before, and then you kind of just put all that in your brain, let your subconscious work on it a little bit, and then you just start sketching to get a feel.
Sounds so simple.
Okay, so this is
Sounds
what
simple.
this is how I always explain Michael. Okay, and it's like he's a savant.
Yeah.
Like they say Beethoven just sat down and started playing a piano. I feel like that with Michael. Like this stuff just comes out of his head.
Yeah.
And he has no idea how.
Right.
That's a creative person.
Yeah.
I can just see it sometimes. Other times
Yeah.
it's like sketches and sketches and sketches that you guys never see to try and get to that essence, that core essence, that feeling of it.
Okay, question for you on that. When you're like, okay, it's my subconscious or sketches, I'm on sketches. I know what that feels like from for example, I take a shower and all of a sudden, this happened to me literally last night. I've been stewing on this social post, the one that I was talking about before this, about, whatever our quality traits as Moxies. And I've been stewing on it for like a week, and I couldn't figure out how I wanted to put it across. And then I'm taking a shower, and all of a sudden it comes to me. And so I get out of the shower, and I slap my towel on and I start typing on my phone these notes. So, things are just always kind of going around in my head when it comes to content or new ideas as it relates to email marketing, social, etc. What does that feel like for you?
Are you washing your hair with your hands
Yeah,
right now?
right, yeah.
Okay.
Just, from a creative standpoint, do you get what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I
Is it
feel
not all
like
the
it would be
time?
so intense.
Sometimes you just put it out of your head, but that's where it's like going for walks or to shower, where you kind of put your brain into a neutral position, is where the things start to cook back there. So I do that I do writing too when I'm not here doing all the other stuff.
All of the others, everything.
But that really helps me for working through ideas, and kind of writing and design to me is like solving a puzzle. Like, I've got these pieces I want to use, and then I kind of set them up in my brain, or I'll set a scene in my brain and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes go for a walk, or all of a sudden early morning in the shower, or I'll see my son was putting on a shirt and it had this particular type of blue, this teal sprue. I'm like, that's the color we need
And it,
for the label.
yeah,
and it was
that's
perfect.
Yeah, that's what happened.
But
So
it
it's-
also is not just like you're just waiting for the idea just to come to your head. You're trying, just like with writing, revising, you're putting the puzzle
Yeah.
together. You're starting designs, you're refining designs, you're like, and it does look like a puzzle piece. You have all these things going on your canvas, on
Yeah.
so it's not just like it's coming out. How many logos am I going to get? Like,
Yeah.
well, we're going to create one final one, but you're going to see a bunch of stuff.
A couple episodes ago, we talked with Jason Miller about his logo design, and he talked a bit about how he thought our branding process was so cool, in that it starts with an initial meeting where we have a conversation. He's like, I came into that meeting and I had no idea what I was going to talk about. I left and I was like, I don't think I talked about a damn thing. Like,
Right.
they aren't going to be able to do anything with that. And then we come back and here's 8 logos. I say 8 conservatively because the boss is here. There might have been more. I don't know. And then it gets revised and revised and revised in 3 rounds, and then you have that final logo. So it is a process, and throughout that whole thing, you guys are constantly thinking about how, even in those meetings, you're thinking like, okay, if I do this, I do that. You look at your notes, and they're just scribbles of thoughts all the time, which is so cool for people that can't draw.
I could draw.
You could if you practiced for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
I had a teacher, my favorite professor in college, and she said anybody can draw. It's just a skill that you learn over time, which is true, but I think the true artistry and the creativity comes from seeing that. What are you going to draw? What are you going to do with that drawing?
That. I'm 30 years old, almost 31. And I still have
Well,
the
I do think-
shittiest handwriting, and I've
Yeah.
been writing
My
since
handwriting's
I was 5
terrible.
years old.
Exactly,
handwriting's
but handwriting's not, he's just saying to train your brain to see the different
yeah,
things.
yeah.
I
Right.
think that's the creative part.
Okay.
But that's the first part of the process, where you absorb all that stuff about the client, about the business, about competitors, whatever, all the colors, what color, you just let it all free form, and then you kind of brain dump it. That's why we have 8 to 10 logos. And that's one of the coolest parts about our process here, is between Mo and I and Tyler now. We just jam them all together, and then we kind of look at them all together, and then it's like, okay, I like this part of that and that part
Yeah.
of this. I'll take some of Mo's and update them a little bit. It's a really cool back and forth
Yeah.
ping pong.
Or sometimes you guys are so simpatico that you have like ideas that you haven't worked together on this at
Yeah.
all, and it's like,
They're similar.
hey, that is kind of like what I was doing here. That is always really cool to me. As we're talking about the branding process and what we do to get our clients away from fine, Kelly, what do you feel like, having done this for over 30 years now, what do you feel like a great brand should actually be? What should a great brand do?
Well, a great brand doesn't communicate your list of services. I'll say that right now. People expect a brand to be like, well, they don't know what I do. That's not what a brand's supposed to do. A great brand is uniquely yours. If you can put your fingers over the name of the company with your brand, and you could put someone else's name in there and it works, then it's not your brand. So it needs to be personal. And I think what Jason was talking about was that he didn't know it, but it was his ideas, his colors, and that's why it felt like his brand. And this is another reason why it's so hard for us to explain the process to people and to understand, is that until you go through it, you don't understand
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
I just think, what makes a great brand is something that's unique to them. Sometimes it's not what we like either. I mean, it's not about taste, right? It's about what works. And that's a hard thing too. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not like, I hate purple or whatever. We're not editing that for the clients at all. It's what they want and what they like, right?
I'm
Why are you
laughing because it is so true, because we just had this happen a few weeks ago. We're all like fisticuffs in the back, like, I want this. And like, in the end, it's like, well, that's not even what the client picked. That's not what worked for them. And, you know, we just went back and forth on it. So it's funny, but that is so true. It has to be uniquely you and
I kind of want to steer this back. I mean, branding is very important, and it's a good way for us to talk about our process and everything, but it's specifically in marketing campaign, I want to talk about the role of creative a little bit.
And that was kind of, you know, the next step that I wanted to get into. So definitely want to touch on the role of creative in campaigns, but I also want to tie that into, yes, we're here to talk about creative and why creative is so important, but there is something that we stress a lot here, especially you, Kelly. It's not just about the creative. The strategy and the messaging have to be important too. Yes, we are an award-winning creative team, but we are also marketing consultants, and that is just as important piece of the pie. I would like to talk about strategy, messaging, and creative all together, and how they're kind of the perfect combo.
So,
trio.
Exactly. What is strategy? Strategy is how we're going to get the message in front of a client's audience, right?
It's the foundation.
But basically what marketing is figuring out who your audience is, what you want to say to them, and then being where they are. I mean, that's a simplified version of that. So again, if a client goes, you know, I listen to WCCO talk radio and I want my ad to be on there. Great. That's, you know, I'm your customer and I don't listen to that.
Yeah.
So that type of thing is what we need to do. So we figure out the strategy, we figure out the plan, we figure out the messaging, and then we figure out the creative. But my point is that creative strategy is marketing strategy.
Yeah.
You know, it all goes together. And what we see, and that's what we do, right? And it is intuitive to us, and it all works together. And sometimes we figure out the strategy and we figure out the messaging, and then we bring it to the guys, and they're figuring out the creative. And sometimes it'll change the messaging.
Yeah, right.
Because like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, you know.
If you're like me, you just write too much.
Yeah, right. And we simplify it, and it's one big thing. What I take offense to, perhaps you could say, is people who see it as secondary or not important.
Sure.
And I did work for a place that was it. It was the strategy was everything, and the creative was not great. What things don't resonate, campaigns don't work.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you say creative, like we know what you mean, but I wonder if people like listening or people outside of us, like they're thinking, like, well,
the
it's all
artwork,
creative, but it is all creative. Yeah, creative. When we say it, is the artwork, the design, the visuals that you see at the end, the video, whatever. Yeah, but it is all our creative process. Like you're creative writing, we're creative concepting the message.
Yeah. So I'll just use our billboard example again.
Sure.
The strategy is I want a billboard because my customers are driving up and down all around St. Cloud. So we figure out where the billboard should go because that's, you know, great location, and we figure out the budget. Okay, what do we want to tell people? We don't know, so we're going to just slap it with everything on a billboard because we paid $2,000 for this billboard. So by the time they get to the end, it's like, well, I don't care. Just let the billboard company do it. Not that they do a bad job, but then you didn't put as much effort into that as you did where the billboards are going to be, or choosing that that's the tactic you want to use. The tactic or the vehicle, you know, the way we're getting the messaging out, the billboard, is not more important than what's on the billboard. It's not the only thing.
Right. Yeah. They all play their equal parts.
Right. So we had a client that said, I don't want to do Facebook ads because I did them last year and it didn't work. What was your strategy for the Facebook ads? What was the creative? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, we can do the exact same campaign the next year and it can be crazy successful because the creative part does, you know, the artwork, the video. Yeah, it's hard for us to separate the strategy and the creative, but a lot of people do, and that's what drives me nuts.
Well, then you can have different strategy depending on where your message is. Like you're going to have a different strategy for Facebook versus that billboard. You're not going to have your huge long message on the billboard.
Exactly.
So creative has to adapt to that as well. You said earlier, like some people don't want to do it because it's fancy or they don't know. I think a lot of people don't understand
that
process,
it matters. Yes.
And that it matters. And that all those components make that whole thing.
Which to me is kind of funny. And I know that we look at things, and you know, going back to billboards, we look at things from a creative mind's eye. I can say like that billboard looks like shit, or I can say that's a really awesome billboard. I imagine that the average person has some concept of that, like,
but not as much as we do.
Right, exactly. But they can see a billboard, or quote unquote not see it because it looks so boring. And they can, it's frustrating when I look at it from that point of view. I'm like, why don't people put more emphasis on creative? How does it not make sense?
Right.
More emphasis on
They don't
it.
understand it.
Yeah,
I
it
know.
can just be so frustrating.
Well, just to
sometimes.
keep going on our metaphor, and we're not just talking about billboards, but right now we are using it as
Well,
an
it's
example.
easy. It's an easy,
So-
tangible thing.
Right.
Especially in St. Cloud, there's a million of them.
And we have 2 billboards out. People are like, oh my God, I love your billboard. Yeah, we know how to billboard,
Yeah.
right? We know how to do it because it's easy to read, it's creative, it's whatever. And it's like, that is a perfect example of, yeah, we know what we're doing
Right.
that way,
It's got a very clear, distinct, simple message
right.
that you can, as you're driving by, you can read it quick and
That's
understand
what,
it.
but they might not know why they love it.
Yeah,
But
right.
we know why they love,
Love it, yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It is intuitive to
Yeah.
us. You could do the same campaign over and over again and change the creative and have different results, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great segue into the kind of final thing that I want to talk about. So if there is someone out there that is listening, or someone that's listening and shares it with someone else that maybe just has a fine brand, what do you think are some tangible things that someone could do today to break free from fine?
Call Moxie
Call
Creative.
Moxie Creative,
That's
yes.
the first
What's
thing
our
I thought
number?
of, too.
320.
310-0065. Whatever. Email us. Don't call us.
Yeah. We.got, right? We.got? Or is it just we dot?
Got at moxiecreative.com.
One of those. Just go to our website. For me, I think it's the first thing that I think people can do is get clear on what your differentiators are and make sure that you know exactly what those things are, so you can either break free from fine by yourself, or you can work with a
Yes.
team to do it. There is a time for DIY, but making sure that you understand how your business is different, how your brand is different, how your messaging can be different, your services, etc. And if you don't really have a good grasp on that, again, that's something that we can help with. But I think that's like the easiest, most important place to start.
Sure. But they might not know what makes them different.
Right, exactly. So
another thing would be you could survey your customers or ask your customers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think another thing is to know who your customers are. And a lot of times that can be hard to articulate, but you could look at your top 5 customers
Mm-hmm.
or your top 10 customers and, who are they? Where do they live? What do they like? What do they do? And then part of the strategy is finding out which social media platform they are, which shopping websites are they on, what media do they consume. If you don't know your customers, then you're making your brand for yourself. And I feel like a lot of times that's the wrong way to do it.
yeah, you want to have a brand that you love and that you
Right.
feel good about, but you want to make sure at the end of the day that your audience can connect with it.
Exactly.
Michael, do you have any thoughts?
Mine's very similar to what you just said. Like, I would say don't think about your business from the inside. Like, we've seen a lot of websites that are organized how it makes sense to them internally, but it doesn't make any sense to whoever's coming to their website,
Yeah.
your users. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with your brand and your messaging. Like, you have to think about putting yourself in the headspace of your customer.
Yeah, which
your
can be
client.
really hard when you
Yeah.
are just kind of in this like echo chamber of your own business and your own world, and that's all that you see day in and day out. It can be really difficult to step beyond that kind of box
Yeah.
that you've put yourself in, and that's exactly why, whether it's marketing or it's HR or it's accounting, whatever that looks like, that's why it's important to have a strong partnerships with outside people that can help you to build your business in all the ways that you maybe just don't know.
I would say websites is a great example of when we help customers with that. We're like, what the heck do you do?
Yeah.
You have not told me anywhere in this website what you do. And it's organized the way their organization is organized.
That's what- yeah, I always-
sales, production, or whatever. It's like this. It's not for the customer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As you tell them, like, you're the expert on your business and what you do. We're the experts at communicating that. That's our job, is to bring that message, what you do, to the end user.
And I know I've made some customers very frustrated because I will just hammer that if I don't understand what you do, how are your customers going to it, and then I can't write your website. We
Yeah.
can't design your website if you can't articulate who your customers are and what you do. And that's more common than it's not. I mean, that sounds ridiculous for me to say, but they are like, no, we make these things. Well, why do you make these things? Because people need them. Who needs them?
them?
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. You know, and so a good thing is to look at what, like I said, your current customers that you have. But like you said, Taylor, people aren't necessarily savvy to what is good design or not. So they do think it's fine and that it works. But that's where you need maybe some help.
Absolutely. And sometimes you have to start with those foundational things first, like your website. You know, usually you can get by with a logo design of some sort, but we see this all the time. People come to us and they're, you know, I want to rank higher on Google. And then they show us their website and it's like, well, that's not going to do it. And so you have to take a few steps back. If you're at a point in your business where you do feel like you're struggling and things do just feel fine, take a big picture look at what feels fine. And then that's maybe also a good place to start. If your website you feel like is a pain point, you know, or you want more traffic to your website, look at your website and say, is this good enough? And people come here.
Yeah. So
Let's say it again because we haven't said it on every other podcast. The quality and integrity of your marketing needs to match the quality and integrity of the service you're providing.
an old school metaphor is, you know, when we used to look at telephone book ads and you'd call the one with the color ad or the bold listing or the biggest ad because it caught your eye. That's creative strategy. The whole idea is to catch your eye and to show up, you know.
Yeah,
That's
or
why
name your
there's-
business with an A.
That's why there's
No.
A plumbing, so
No.
they're the first in the phone book.
That drives me nuts.
I don't know.
But
I
I'm
don't
just
even
saying.
know what a phone book is. So.
Okay. Back to the phone book. Anywhere.
We get it,
I
Yvonne.
used to have to bring the research to customers. I'm that old. Would say your ad should be a color ad in the newspaper because this is how much better color ads perform. Okay, that's creative strategy. Again, with website design or whatever. Nowadays, people expect good design. It doesn't have to be fancy, and it's not foo-foo for artsy-fartsy's sake. It's good design, and that's what we're talking about. And good design communicates.
Yep.
That's the whole idea. And we expect it. Subconsciously, we don't even know it.
Right. But
Everyone,
I think the average person is
yeah,
also like that
we are
too.
attracted to good design. And now, like I said, nowadays, like I'm an old person, in today's modern world, we expect good design because it's accessible. People will buy more
Yeah.
when they like the design.
Yeah,
That's the truth.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
invest in good design. So Michael, since this is your first appearance on the Behind the Brand podcast, and hopefully not our last, I think you have such great wisdom to share.
What does that mean?
guess we'll see.
I feel
I just
like
hope
that feels
that
like
you-
that's that's
Guess we'll see how the ratings.
I hope that he chooses to come back. Not that he has
I
much
didn't have
choice.
choice.
Yeah, Kelly just walked into your office and said you're doing this. I really want to know, you know, having been in the working as a creative for many, many years, what do you feel like is the most rewarding piece of that?
I mean, it's still always cool to see your stuff around town. We work with a lot of local people. So I went to a bar restaurant last night with my family for late Mother's Day, and it was like 3rd Street, Beaver Island, like all along
those
one
tin
back
tackers?
wall. Yeah,
Yeah.
the tin tackers. Like, hey, I did that. I helped with that.
Yeah.
That's always cool. But like things like we get really good feedback from a client. We just got that. Was it a
Testimonial.
text or a
Nice- yeah,
message?
nice
Our
text
Google
message.
review.
review.
It's like, that's awesome. Like, because he may not 100% be design minded like we are, but he appreciates it.
He
gets
values it.
He values our professionalism.
Yeah, there's that for me has been like the best thing. Like, yes, love seeing our work, but when I have a client that just feels so appreciative of the work that we did because there's so much emotion and time and just all these resources that go into the stuff that we do, and unfortunately sometimes it goes a little bit unrecognized. So I do love that.
Well, and if they don't value, I mean, if they value it, but if they don't know right away the impact, they will later.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
right after they do it, they're like, well, that was a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I was emailing with a client that we worked with last year, and it felt like, like they liked what we did, but I didn't feel like whatever.
Yeah.
And then I was emailing with them yesterday, and they're like, I still love it so much. So
Yeah,
just a little
yeah.
touch in, and to hear that feels great. So do you have anything
My
to add?
most
yeah,
rewarding?
yeah. What's most rewarding for you in the creative world?
You know, I like helping people, you know, and I think that when I won the silver medal 10 years ago, I wish I could find that speech because I wrote about that it's not about us. You know, we do this because we are creative and we cannot do anything else. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we would do whether we got paid or not.
Yeah.
But it's not about us. And so that's why we put our egos aside. It's about helping these people. And if we can help them with our talent, I mean, that's what Oprah says we're supposed to do. You know, we're supposed to use our talents to help other people.
All
And so-
hail Oprah.
yeah.
Oh, that
And
was
so,
funny.
I mean, I like that part. You know, sometimes they're resistant to the help, and it's like, well, just let me help you. Yeah. I like the people part of it, I guess, too.
Yeah, me too. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Behind the Brand. If you are out there and you are feeling like, oh, I'm maybe playing it a little too safe, I want to take a few risks, I want to live boldly in my personal life and my professional life, whether that's with your business.
How are we going to help them personally?
Well,
We'll have
just
some
listen
ideas.
to our podcast. We have funny stuff on here. It's great. Understand that growth starts when you stop settling for safe. So whether you're building a brand from scratch or thinking about a refresh, just remember that bold stands out and fine fades away.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Behind the Brand. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. If you didn't, share it with an enemy. To keep up with us, follow along on our socials. Links are in the show notes below.